Hope everyone's having a great weekend. We are exactly 1 week away from TFCon DC, so I hope to see you there. But before we talk about TFCon DC, let's jump into another Patreon listener question. Once again, if you are interested in asking a question to be fleshed out and talked about on the podcast, be sure to check out our Patreon link below for all kind of cool perks and extra stuff. And hey, ask some cool questions. We'll have some cool topics here on the podcast to discuss. And we have one here from our Patreon member, Zero. I have to ask him in person how he pronounces that. So Zero wants to know something I've been pondering that I was going to ask in the chat, but I might as well figure it would be a decent podcast question for the Patreon. The Titan class has thus far been all city bots or very large combiners, with Omega Supreme out now and Scorponok all but confirmed for next year, and the Seacons already being confirmed and sold individually as deluxes. Will have modern representations in all of American G1 continuities and G1 combiners. Where do you think the Titan class will go next? Repaint seem unlikely, given that we've only done it once with Grand Maximus. Don't think it, which didn't do too well. Do you think they'll go with something from a Japanese combiner or play sets like Rocket Base? So pretty much what he's asking is, where do we think the Titan scale will go now in light of Scorponok being announced? Like, what is left in terms of expected slots of what characters that could be used? And I'll use this also as a quick history lesson. So, like, the Titan class started in 2013 with Metroplex, and that, because it was the first time they did Titan class, they really milked that mold as much as possible to make sure they got their investment back. There was the SDCC one, which was like a mild repaint, had some chrome on it, came with some little decoy-like figures based off of the War for Cybertron designs in purple and red of the Autobots and the Decepticons. They did a Hong Kong version, which was the exact same thing as the San Diego Comic-Con version, but instead of it being purple and red decoy figures, they did in gold and silver. And then Takara had theirs, which was a mild repaint and came with an extra big gun and stuff like that. Titans actually were kind of quiet for all of 2014, but then in 2015 we got the Devastator. And that was also kind of tied in with the video game, once again, that was coming out in that of the PlayStation game. And what ended up happening was same thing. They did a mild retool repaint for San Diego Comic-Con. They did a mild repaint for the Takara version, really kind of just making the best of that mold to make sure they get their investment back. And then in 2016, we got Fortress Maximus. So we had the Fortress Maximus that we know here in America, and then Takara had theirs, which was an extensive retool for the head itself to give it more a animation accurate head mode, if you will, the Fortress mode, if you will, and also had a mild repaint. And then it had the infamous repaint a couple years after that of Grand Maximus, where they wanted to do a Fortress Maximus repaint based off of the Master Force character. And they did this as, I don't want to say like a crowdfunding, but they were like, hey, if 2,000 of these get pre-ordered, it'll happen. And if 3,000 of these get pre-ordered, we're going to make an extra Pretender shell to go, like a Grand Pretender shell to go with Grand Maximus. And it'll come with a little Gatling gun accessory too. And unfortunately, while it did get the 2,000 pre-orders, it didn't get the 3,000 pre-orders. So we never got that Pretender shell, and it ended up in limbo, which makes me wonder, and to this day, people now, especially in light of the Unicron situation, did they even get that 2,000 sometimes? Like we go, maybe they probably got less than that, and they just made it happen for the sake of it. In 2017, we got Trypticon. Everyone knows the story with that one, where then Ollie's got a whole bunch of them super cheap. He had some issues with his hip joints and ratchets. Trypticon was Trypticon. 2018, we got Predaking. That was the return to another big combiner. He was what he was. People liked it. And then in 2019 of this year, we are celebrating that of Omega Supreme, who is actually, as of this recording, starting to fall into the hands of a lot of people now. So, and he's really cool. I really like Omega a lot. And now we know, as of New York Comic Con 2019, like Zero just said, we got Scorponok coming. So what does that essentially leave us left? Well, when we look from a repaint perspective, let's say Hasbro wants to do repaints in 2021. From a repaint perspective, you have Metro Titan from Metroplex, which I find personally that's a little bit of an obscure character from a mainstream nature. Because keep in mind, obscure characters could survive in a deluxe price point or even a leader class. But I think that when you're doing something that's going to be your centerpiece at New York Comic-Con, your centerpiece at San Diego Comic-Con, they really want it to be something that's a trademark iconic thing within the Hasbro brand. Even Metro Titan was obscure in Japan. You know, he came around in manga stories and story page stories in Zone when Transformers was pretty much a dead brand even in Japan at the time. So it's a really, that's more of a stretch. It's kind of a no-brainer repaint, but it's also a reason why we've never really gotten a Metro Titan repaint since the very first one. Obviously, he appeared in the IDW comics and stuff, but again, small audience, small list of eyes, essentially. When you go to Fortress Maximus, yeah, we got Grand Maximus, but maybe a Brave Maximus. And the argument that I could kind of almost give with Brave Maximus is that, number one, it's been 3 years since we had the Fortress Maximus release, so we have a good distance from it. What I could see them doing is they could revisit Brave Maximus in 2021 for 2 reasons, and I'll say why. Number one, they could kind of celebrate it as the 20th anniversary of Robots in Disguise, because that's where Brave Maximus came from, or as he was called, Fortress Maximus in the American version. They could kind of use that as a celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Robots in Disguise brand in America, have this big figure. Maybe they could take Fortress Maximus and retool him again, just like Fortress was a retool of Metroplex, to make it a little different from the Fortress Maximus original mold. And I could also see it kind of being as a 20-year later apology for Hasbro, because they did a solicitation in 2002 where they were saying, oh, we're going to get Brave Maximus in America as Fortress Maximus, like the Brave Maximus colors and everything. And it was going to be like an FAO Schwartz exclusive and all that stuff. And ultimately, in the end, it didn't happen because apparently it didn't pass the standard drop tests and safety tests for toys at the time. So we ended up never getting that toy here in America, that paint scheme of that version. And so it could be a way that, hey, 20 years later, we finally release Brave Maximus, a.k.a. Robots in Disguise Fortress Maximus, in the American audience. That's one way I could see it. It's kind of fun when you think about it, right? For 2021, it works out with the numbers and everything. The question is, would they want to call it Brave Maximus? Because they don't have that IP registered, and it wasn't called Brave Maximus here in America. It was called Fortress Maximus in Robots in Disguise 2001. So it's one way to look at it. And then you have, like, let's say, you look at Omega Supreme, you could go, okay, Omega Sentinel, right? And I've talked about this on the podcast in the past where, you could just give Omega Supreme the Omega Sentinel colors, and then he pretty much is, the Countdown rocket base in a lot of ways from the Micromasters. Like, it's funny how well those two match up in a lot of ways in terms of colors. And considering that 2020 and 2021 might have more of a Micromaster Earthrise base gimmick with it, we'd be able to then get the rocket base, zone base, Countdown from Omega, and Omega Sentinel, and it'll kind of fit in with the theme. So that's another way to look at it. So, 2021, you could have a Brave Maximus or maybe an Omega Sentinel. When you look at Trypticon, Trypticon's only major repaint/retool was that of Giga Storm, which was the Beast Wars second character. Kind of obscure, considering how Trypticon kind of fell flat in sales and stuff. I don't think they want to revisit it and then give it an even more obscure character. So I doubt that one. You could look at Scorponok and then same thing, go Black Zarek. Yeah, obscure for Americans because no one really knows who Black Zarek is in America outside of hardcore Transformer fans. Japan obviously knows who Black Zarek is, but I think that it would be too soon to go from Scorponok to Black Zarek from 2020 to 2021. I think that's something, could be a Takara Tommy Mall exclusive, could be a Hasbro Pulse thing. If eHobby still existed, it could have been an eHobby thing. but I don't really see it being the centerpiece for 2021 as the next Titan. And the last one that I think it could be, and this is just a shot in the dark, it's just me playing with kind of the way that the cerebral thing, how it works with Hasbro sometimes, is sometimes we don't know where the brand will be in 2021. And what I mean by that is because, like, we have Earthrise for 2020. That's the theme. That's what they're going to be going with. Just like, Omega Supreme came from Siege. Predaking came from Power of the Primes. Trypticon and Fortress Maximus, that was the Titan Return kind of era. So it's like, and then Combiner Wars with Devastator. It's like, so everyone kind of was of the theme. We don't know what the theme will be in 2021. We don't know what the state of the Generations-esque kind of, Classics-esque kind of line will be then. So the question is, like, if we don't know what it is, then you could kind of be creative with the answer. And one way to look at it is, if, all the stuff that I've listed thus far, there's 2 other bases that really I haven't mentioned. And it was that of, number 1, we have Grandis. Grandis was a MicroMaster base from the the Battlestars Return of Star Convoy series of story pages and manga. And he's a really obscure character. Again, obscure in Japan, even more obscure in America. So it, I don't know if they'd want to get behind such an obscure character. He's, it's, again, he would work with the MicroMaster gimmick if it continues on into 2021 from Earthrise's 2020. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. And I love Grandis. Me personally, I love the character. I love the original toy, but I just don't know if they would go that route. And the last one, what it could be, and this one's almost a little more plausible, but it could be just a pipe dream, is the only other 2 city former, base formers in Transformer history that we've kind of not mentioned up to this point is when you jump into Beast Wars, and that of Orkanok and Arachnid, the 2 micro playset cities. And the funny thing with that is the Arachnid trademark still exists. It's still registered. They still refresh it. So if they want to use it again, here's a place that they could use it, because it was Arachnid the base, then it was the Spider Lady for years, and then now we're back at Arachnid the base maybe again. Orkanaut, maybe not so much so. It's not trademarked, so, but I could see maybe if they want to be really creative, they want to really have fun with the whatever the smaller price point will be, probably still MicroMasters. They could have a giant Spider City playset. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe they want to go with that. Something that doesn't have a robot mode. Just has an alt, like something that's a spider alt mode that turns into a base. If they really want to be crazy, maybe 2021 will be a beast year. Who knows? Earthrise and then Rise of the Beasts. Who knows? That's one way to look at it. But I think that if I was in Hasbro's boardroom and I had to make a decision from everything that I just said, I think Brave Maximus would be the most logical one in terms of we could celebrate the 20th anniversary of a previous brand. That was the return of vehicles for Transformers in a lot of ways. Robots in Disguise, Car Robots was a big turning point for Transformers that they've literally haven't turned away from since. We didn't return hardcore to Beasts ever since then. So I could see it as that way. They could then try to sell it as, we're making up for something we promised years ago to American fans. And, it finishes the trinity of the Maximuses, because we got Fortress, we got Grand, now we'll have Brave. I mean, there's so many ways they could go about that from a marketing standpoint. And it just works. And then again, the way that I see it, if they want to really, save money too, because, hey, maybe Unicron scared them a little bit, that large Transformers might not bring in all the cheese that they hope, but if they want to even save money, take that Fortress mold and just do a heavy retool again. You guys have done magic with retooling in the past. Let's see it again. Do a heavy retool so at least he looks different from Grand and Brave Maximus, and just have fun with it. Do that color scheme and then do the marketing all around it, and then you have something you could show off. And because it's been, and by the time 2021 will roll out around, it'll be already almost 5 years since that Fortress Maximus came out. So it'll be a fresh take, at least for a bunch of people. So that's one way to look at it. And that's more or less it. I mean, and then again, like the other ones are more, less plausible just because of timelines and all of that. Omega Sentinel, it seems like a no-brainer, but it's still too close. Same thing with Black Zarek and his obscurity. So that's the one I would go with. I'd go with a Brave Maximus, but using that kind of marketing ploy to go with it, because we know that Titans aren't just our big toy in our display. There's a whole PR that goes around it every year, and how Hasbro handles it with the Transformer brand. So I could see it going that route. But let me know what you think. That's my take, but maybe I'm forgetting something. Maybe there's something that belongs there, or maybe Brave Maximus is the right choice. I don't know, but let me know what you think. And thanks again, Zero, for the question. Makes a really good discussion. And if you want to, as always, anyone who's listening, if you want to ask a question on the podcast, be sure to check out our Patreon below in the description and shoot us some cool stuff that we could talk about.